Are you looking to level up your author business?
Are you pounding your head against a wall, wondering what your next step should be? Then join me, Daniel Wilcox.
And me, Sacha Black, as we haul ass each week in a bid to level up.
Level up!
Come along for the ride as we delve deep into the business of writing,
Craft,
entrepreneurship,
and every level of the author journey. This is the Next Level Author Podcast. Hello, Achievers, and welcome to the Next Level Author Podcast, a podcast where we hold each other to account and track our step-by-step progress as we level up our author business. My name's Daniel Wilcox, and here with me every week is...
Sacha fucking Black.
I'm always going to lead you into that one, because I noticed that you stole me last week. You were like, it's me, Sacha, and I'm with Daniel, and I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry.
To shine. It's fine, it's fine.
Yeah, I know, I ruined it.
How are you? How are you doing?
Oh my, it's has
week.
been, day 55 in the Big Brother house. That was a terrible accent. I apologise deeply.
People are going to think this is like the only human interaction we have once a week. And it just...
What do you mean it is the only human interaction? Okay, so how am I? Well, it has been quite a week. First of all, I had the horrible realization that I move my head all of the time whilst I'm talking, which I didn't realize until I watched these back on video and was like, oh, what am I doing? I don't know, but I'm like head waggly. Yeah, anyway, how am I? No, so I'm fine. I had a real roller coaster of a week because I was really struggling at the beginning of the week because I was struggling to get anything done. We are still in bloody lockdown. So, I still have my child everywhere, all of the time. And, so I'm not getting enough work done at the end of the day. I am not getting enough work done. I have a launch in about 4 weeks' time. And do you know how much marketing I've done?
This much.
Fuck all. Yeah, basically that much. So yeah, that's a problem. But then we had an offer accepted on a house. So, swings and roundabouts. So
congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. So now we are in the horrible process of waiting this entire weekend to find out whether or not our mortgage will go through. And hopefully we'll find out on Monday. But Jesus, really? We have to wait the whole weekend?
Adulting's so hard right now.
Isn't it? But these things, you cannot, just because we've had the offer accepted, that, you cannot assume that you have got that house until basically the ink is dry on the contract. So we are trying very hard not to get too excited, but also it's really hard not to get excited. So, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I've just really tried to take it easy this week. It's one of those weeks where I'm single parenting my son all week. So I'm trying to still get up early, still get some words in, and then just chip away at bits of work and find something that will keep him amused during pockets of the day, and just trying to find a balance of, teaching a child at home, 5-year-olds, their work, and obviously 6-year-olds are works and 7-year-olds are works, and kids are freaking hard work. But I am loving the fact that, because 2 weeks ago he was in isolation, so I didn't get to see him for 2 weeks. So I am really, really enjoying the extra time that I get to spend with him. But I'm very similarly minded to you in that while I am trying to enjoy that, there's constantly that niggle in the back of my head of I need to be getting this done. And what about this? Oh, and I've got this. Oh yeah, this is coming around really quickly. We're on day, 33 or something of lockdown. And to me, that's just flown by.
You know that.
People who know me know that I get obsessed with time, particularly in stuff like that. It's weird. I won't go into it. But no, it's just flown by so quickly. But
you also celebrated an anniversary.
I did.
Didn't you, darling?
I did. It's celebrated in as much as 3 days later I put up the shared post from the memory. But yeah, it was my 1 year anniversary of being a full-time author this week, which was, I think, Tuesday. And the reason that I did remember was because my sister messaged me and went, congratulations. And I was like, huh? What have I done?
Oh my God, that is particularly spectacularly useless, because number one, year one is a huge achievement.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I'm glad I've made it this far. I feel like I'm in a position where I'm not worried about losing where I am at the minute, which is nice. So yeah, just here's to the next year. And I mean, learned loads of lessons on the way. I've got a couple of questions that relate to some of that kind of thing that we'll come on to in a couple of weeks, I guess. I like how every time I mention a question, your face just drains of colour. But this is the whole point of the podcast. Is that a question?
Why did I sign up to this?
But yeah, so that's been my week. I mean, it's just, I don't know, every day it just feels the same, but it feels different. And it's one of those where it's like, it's Friday today as we're recording, and I woke up this morning, and for some reason, I don't know if it's years of just social grooming, the back of my head went, it's Friday, and then the front of my head went, so what?
Yeah.
What's different?
Yes, oh my god, like literally Chloe did the same, and I basically did the same as well, and I'm like, every day is the fucking same. Like, it literally doesn't matter. My friend texted me this morning and was like, how are you, like how are you, or how is everything feeling, or like how is the day? And I just replied, monotonous. Like, that was it. My one word response,
just copy and paste it, just keep going. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, that is life in quarantine. But let's focus on this podcast and not moan about the fact that we're still stuck inside, and go into our weekly confessionals. So, Sacha, you were looking at mailing list and other stuff. Did that happen?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. I vastly overestimated what I could get done, and I very stupidly put 3 things on my to-do list. So my 3 things were: decide mailing list provider, print out and edit my autoresponders, and do a brainstorm for ideas of my, what is it? Mailing list.
Yes.
So what did I actually get done? Well, I didn't do it all, and you can judge whether or not I've done enough given the circumstances. Just for listeners who are not watching on YouTube, I'm showing Dan my brainstorm, and it does say like email
brain dump with a picture of a poop.
Yeah. It literally does have a picture of a poop. I drew a poop. Oh, I was such a child. And then I also printed my autoresponders. So I have my autoresponders printed. However, I did not edit them, and I didn't decide which mailing list provider. I sort of narrowed it down. So I kind of have a list of 3, but one's still really expensive but has a lot more functionality. Then one's really cheap, and then one is new. And I haven't quite worked out which one I want to do. So I haven't done them all, but I have worked on all of them. So I don't know.
Well, I think we'll have to accept it, because otherwise I'm worried that you might have a nervous breakdown.
Yeah, cheers, thanks.
Please. No, I think it counts. It's a fair chunk. So mine was unify my author brand across, making me horror in one regard, and normal and nice in non-fiction, and look at my mailing list and autoresponders as well. And yeah, I mean, I've updated my horror stuff across. I didn't have a whole lot of work to do. I just had to get to some niggly bits and sort that out. And then non-fiction wise, that's separated. I mean, I've done something like, I've got Great Writers Share YouTube and Instagram channel now, but I just actually need to get around to posting and creating a presence of some kind for that non-fiction side of things. And then my mailing lists, I went back and I looked over them, and actually they weren't too bad. So I kind of tweaked and updated them so they're sort of more in line with where they need to go. They're really easy to get unruly when you've got sort of different autoresponder sequences and people at different stages, and sometimes it's a whole minefield. But yeah, so I managed to get those done and chip away. So, boss.
Wicked.
Personal update. How's everything going? What are you working on?
So, God. One of my pet hates is when you go to do a task and then it turns into 8 other tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but this happens to me an awful lot. So this week I have ordered my hardback proof, the first ever hardback. So that's great. And I'm just about to consolidate paperback, ebook and hardback on Amazon and stuff, and I was working on the workbook, which is now also done. So in terms of getting products ready for the launch, I'm pretty much there. Now, the downside of that is I noticed a mistake on a book that's been published for over a year. So I now have to get the cover changed, and because it's like free upload for Ingram Spark, or free revisions I should say, for Ingram Spark until the end of May, I've decided because I don't have enough to do,
here we go,
to redo the formatting on all of my other books. So I've got 4 books to reformat, and which does also mean I have to change the spine width of 2 of them. And basically I'm adding that into the mix. So that's kind of where I'm at. Also, I had like a consultation with a teacher friend of mine who is helping me to structure my course, which is going to be courses, thanks to her help. So yeah, I was suffering with a lot of imposter syndrome around creating or turning my book, The Anatomy of Prose, into a course. But I really think it is the perfect book to start with. So yeah, she's helped me with that. So this kind of, I don't know if we're talking about last week or this week or whatever, but at the moment that is one of the things that I'm going to try and do. And then I've got like a non-fiction book that I'm working on, but mostly it's launch stuff, trying to get a course running, and a non-fiction project that I can't talk about.
Nice.
How about you?
Sounds good. I am, what am I doing? So I'm chipping away at my horror serial. I've got a bit of a deliberate lull in client work this week, so it gives me a bit more sort of breathing room to work on some other stuff and have a bit of a relax before wrong word, before it all kicks off again next week. But so I've been chipping away at my horror serial. I've nearly finished the prequel. I'm at about 5,000 words on that now, and I'm liking where it's going. It's nice because it's one of the first projects in ages where it's been solely just what I want to do. So it's nice sort of chipping away at that, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into like the meat of the main serial. And then I've also collected back all of the questionnaire stuff and all of the feedback from different collaborators who are jumping in and lending some of their voices to my collaboration book. And I've started going through that and editing it and trying to find places to fit their words. And to be honest, I'm really enjoying writing it. I really am. It's one of those where, like for example, today I've got my son all day, and in pockets of time I'll let him sit and I'll watch TV or just have sort of like half an hour where he does his thing. And I don't find any trouble in just sitting down and writing it and editing it and having a bit of fun and playing with it, because I think for me, where you're writing a fiction, there's a certain structure and you have these certain expectations, obviously tropes within the genre to hit, and making sure that the characters follow this emotion, the readers follow the emotional journey with the characters and all that kind of stuff. With non-fiction, I just feel like I'm just, we'll see how it goes when it launches, but it just feels like it's just me writing the stuff I want to do. And I've got some kind of innate sense of where things should go in non-fiction and the format things should go, because I've got experience as a copywriter and I've also read enough non-fiction to have just inherited some of that, I hope.
It's also inherently easier to write. It is.
It's just,
it is.
I can put what words I want to and not worry about trying to sound a certain way.
Exactly.
So genuinely considering more non-fiction books in the future, which I know we've spoken about anyway.
You are.
We'll see. I'm going to write, The Anatomy of Prose. A guy's perspective on sensational sentences. But yeah, so there are those 2, and they're sort of the main ones that I'm working on at the minute. Oh, and just a bunch of background stuff in terms of my publishing imprint and company that I'm getting all the groundwork off. So all of that's happening, which is good. So lots going on, but now is the time to dive into a question. It feels like I've not asked you a question in ages, even though I'm always hounding you on Facebook.
I don't understand how this, but now we're in a weekly, so we have no choice but to keep going, and this will be every week forever.
Oh, Jesus, effing Christ. Okay, so my question this week, it's nice and simple, and take it whichever way you like, and it's, how do you assess whether or not an opportunity is worth pursuing?
Oh, that is a good question. Oh, that is a good question, because I've had a few opportunities come up of late, and I have had to do that. And it's really hard because there are so many different things that are important. So, and it really depends what your goals are. So I think before you can assess an opportunity, you have to know where you are going. Like, what is the bigger picture? What do you want from your business? What do you want? Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And I know not everybody likes to look ahead at the future and be 5 years in the future. But I feel like if you don't have that goalpost, then you have no map. Having that goalpost almost gives you that map. And so for me, the best way of assessing is to compare the opportunity to that map or to that goalpost. So for example, I had an opportunity that came up where I could invest in something, and it's in the sphere of indie publishing world. But if I did that, then I probably would have less time to write. So I had to say, okay, this might bring me income, which is definitely something I want, but it's also going to take me away from the writing. And it was a fantastic opportunity, but for me, because the thing that I want to do more than anything else is to write more books, at the moment that opportunity doesn't work. And that's really hard because I'm essentially saying no to money, and actually a lot of passive income, because that's the opportunity. It would be passive. Now I could look at it from a different perspective, in that one of my goals is to have more passive income. And so there comes a point, I suppose, where you have to weigh up each goal against each other. And that's why I'm saying having that one, force at the end, that one end point, is so important. Because yes, the income and the passive income is important, but what is more important is enabling myself to write more words. So I think for me, yeah, that's really important. The other thing is, I do this really annoying thing where I will ask people for an opinion, because I will say that I don't know what I think. And actually, half of the time, I genuinely don't, or at least my consciousness doesn't know what it is. My subconsciousness, however, 100% knows the answer. So somebody will say, oh, well, I think you should do this. And I'd be like, no. And automatically I have my answer, because somebody's telling me what they think is right, or what they would do, and I recoil so violently against somebody else's opinion that it then shows me what I already knew. And I am, so there's two last things to say. I am a huge believer in that we all know deep down what the answer is, and that we should find our answers as to whether or not we should take an opportunity from inside. And therefore, I've forgotten completely what the other point was, but basically my message to everybody is to be empowered to make your own decisions, I think, against opportunities, because I think too often we look to others for reassurance, but actually 9 times out of 10, as long as you know what you want, then you can compare that opportunity to whether or not that matches. But yeah, what about you? How do you assess it?
I think for me it depends. If you had asked me this at different points on my author journey, I think I would have had a completely different answer. Because there have been times where when you're first starting out, it's difficult to know, or you might know what that end goal is, where it's, I want to be full-time, I want to have X amount of money, I want to, whatever your goal is. And in the beginning, you don't really know what each opportunity is going to lead to. So you're more likely to take every opportunity on the off chance that it would. And along my personal journey, I've had quite a few times where I've been almost paralyzed by indecision between, okay, but this would step me up in one direction, but is that, up and to the side instead of 3 steps up where I could be doing something else? And it's so difficult because, like you say, you need to know what that end goal is for yourself. You need to know what it is you're striving for. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that the option that you've been presented with, as good as it looks, is going to get you there. So I think for me, mine's very similar. Obviously, the two biggest resources we have are time and money. So realistically, I look at what I'm currently doing. I look at whether or not I have the bandwidth to include something like that to start with, and then whether or not the financial reward is going to be good enough. And sometimes it's not even. Sometimes a financial reward is really 3 steps away from that initial gratification of finishing the project. But one thing that I have found as well is I've been writing since 2015, and I've taken on sort of opportunities here, there, and everywhere for different things: podcasting, fiction, collaborations, like everything. And quite a lot of those, obviously, there's probably more failed projects than there are projects that I've completed. And I've completely lost my train of thought. That's really annoying.
One thing I was going to agree with you on is that I think when you are earlier in your career, you actually have to say yes to a lot of things, because it does so many things for you. It grows your career, it grows your networking, it grows your reputation.
Just getting your face out there.
But I do think there comes a time where you have to start saying no. And funnily enough, I'm literally starting to go into that now, because everything has grown so exponentially in the last year that there is no longer enough time in each day for me to do all of those things. I cannot reply to everybody's messages on Facebook. I cannot reply to, and this is, yes, okay, we are talking about opportunities, but I can't speak at every opportunity that people are asking me to. I can't, guest post everywhere, because they're just, if I did all of those things, I'd never write books.
Yeah.
And I think that is I think it's part of that career and business arc.
Yes, yeah. But no one really tells you about that to start with. But that did bring me back onto my train of thought, which was the whole notion of, like you say, you get to a point where you bring on so much that you have to start saying no to things. And I know that before I went full time, there were a few projects where I was writing in series, I was doing X, Y, Z, and then another opportunity came, and I was literally like, okay, if I take this one, I then have to cut 3 or 4 different things in order to take this on. And it's just on an individual basis. I don't think anyone can tell you, right, like you say, your gut plays a big part of that. And I mean, even recently, even in the last couple of months, I've had a couple of really good opportunities to collaborate and do things that I've ended up having to turn down, because I'm now in a position where I'm financially okay doing the things I'm currently doing, and I'm trying to work towards the gratification of, like we said in the beginning, being free to choose a project you're working on, all that kind of thing. And the projects that I did start actually doing, I ended up doing a U-turn on, because they just didn't fill my creative well, and it just felt too much like it was taking me away from what I wanted to do and what I'm happy doing. So there's really kind of a compromise. I mean, like you say, in the beginning, you're more willing to take on projects that aren't exactly what you want, because that later on they'll pay back.
Yeah, but so the thing that you said that really strikes a chord is that I don't think I necessarily knew 2 years ago what it was that made me happy, or what route I was going down. Or yes, okay, you have that end goal, but actually it takes a while before that end goal crystallizes. So you have this sort of fuzzy thing several years down the road, and the more years of work and the more books you produce, and the more things you try and fail at and succeed at and collaborate on or whatever, the more that distant picture really does start to crystallize. And that then and some of that literally is time and trial and experiment.
I had
what a good question.
I know. Thank you. I just to cap this off, I had a conversation with Tom Ashford from the Self-Publishing Spotlight on the Great Writers Share podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the thing that struck a chord with me there was the fact that he was talking about his soft relaunch of his books, because he'd already had X amount of books out, he'd been writing for X amount of years, but he was basically stopping and going, okay, I'm now going to take the lessons I've learned and go forward with that. And I think similarly with my journey, and a bit of what we said last week, is that I've written horror to start with, and then started going off into all these other genres, and only in doing those other genres have I realized how much I love writing horror. So if I hadn't have gone on that journey, I could have gone in a completely different direction and everything could have been different. But
yeah, and I'm exactly the same, but sort of sliding the other way. So I spent a really long time writing young adult, and actually I'm starting to think I probably should have been writing adult, because and the reason I say this is because I derive so much joy from writing nonfiction, where I get to swear like a filth pot and be a bit more sarcastic, and and I think, much as I adore the tone of young adult, I think I am probably more suited to writing adults. So, but that's really hard for me to segregate and move in that direction. But I suppose these are the lessons that you learn. And actually, until you said that, I don't think I'd realised it in quite that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say, what I was looking for is podcasts really do sell books, because I listened to that podcast episode and immediately bought one of Tom's books. So
the covers are beautiful. They are fantastic.
Oh my God, so good, so
yes.
good.
And he did them himself, the annoying bugger.
Oh my God, that makes me sick.
The money you can save. Oh well. Okay, so I guess that caps up the question part. How are we leveling up our business this week?
I don't know, because normally I try to think of something related to the question, but it was your question, so your job this week to think of the task.
So really should think of these ahead of time, considering I did ask the question. I mean, have you got anything specific? Because I remember that we spoke this week about picking things that don't necessarily add an extra massive wad to our to-do list, but do help chip forward in the right direction. I think my personal goal is to finish up the second edit of Collaborating, because I think I can chip away at that and get that done. I hope.
I think I need to do some launch tasks. So I'm not going to say what they are, but I'm going to say I have to do at least 4 launch tasks this week.
Out of your massive book of to-dos.
Out of my ridiculous to-do list. Yeah, because then there's no pressure on me to have to, because I will just rebel against that, let's be real. So yeah, okay. 4 launch tasks, and you need to remember that, and I need to remember that, so that
we'll pop it in the
what we're supposed to do.
And our audience question of the week: how do you assess whether or not an opportunity is worth pursuing? So if you want to get in touch and tell us how you assess your opportunity costs, then you can go over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/nextlevelauthors, or just reach out to each of us individually if you're in either of our networks and say hi. And there's no excuse this week, because this will be the first episode that goes live now that everything is launched.
Mm-hmm.
So fantastic. So yes, thank you everyone for joining us at the Next Level Author podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Hungry for more?
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can hear more of my angelic accent and Dan's dulcet tones on our other podcasts.
For more of me, check out the Great Writer Share podcast.
For more of me, listen to the Rebel Author podcast. We'll be back next week holding each other to account as Dan
and Sacha
become
Next Level
Authors.